Welcome to Teaching Brewed. Today, we're going to be talking about a book that we've been reading, which is pretty interesting. It's called Classroom Management in the Digital Age.
Classroom Management in the Digital Age is authored by Heather Dowd and Patrick Green. Heather is a teacher, educational technology coach, science enthusiast, and learning. And she is based out of the United States right now, but she was a teacher in Singapore for many years. And her co-author, Patrick Green, is an educational technology coordinator and site director for the Global Online Academy for the Singapore American School.
Well, I'm having my coffee this morning so that I could do my part to fit the theme.
I am as well. I just picked up my Starbucks.
And I made my cup of tea, so yes.
Well, I've got water.
which is the basic ingredient that all of us require to make our respective cups.
That's true.
Heather, in your time zone, you should be having a wine right now.
I would agree with that.
I should probably be having some.
If this were reversed, I'd definitely have a scotch in my hand.
Don't let us stop you, Andrew. It's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world.
Oh, I don't know. There's something about having a scotch at 8:05 in the morning that really just makes you think twice.
Yeah. So, okay, jumping a little bit here. Within the book, Heather, you wrote about how your teaching changed and how things kind of changed for you. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that once you had all these devices in the classroom?
Yeah, I think you're referring to there's like a little pull-out in there and it says Heather's story. Yeah. Something that changed for me was just having the ability to share resources in a different way with students. And so before my students had devices, you do your lesson planning wherever you do that, whether it's on paper or in a Word doc or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And then I would come to school and where I was teaching at the time, one of the requirements is that we had to write the learning objectives in kind of a little agenda. It had to be displayed in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I was teaching high school physics and math. And so I had 3 different classes. And so that was a lot each evening or morning to get up there on the board. But, that's important. It's important for students to know what's happening and where they're headed and where they've come from in terms of their learning. And something that changed as technology grew at our school was having the ability to post those things online. And so originally it was just a really generic website where I would put the objectives and kind of the agenda. But when it ended up happening sort of naturally or kind of slowly, I guess, is I started doing my lesson planning there instead of on paper and transferring it. Mm-hmm. So students kind of saw everything, right? Like as I was planning it. So even if I was planning like 1 or 2 weeks ahead, they could see that and they could click where they needed to be. And I would put homework and I would link to resources that they needed. And I even stopped having them, I didn't make them stop taking notes, but if they asked, I had a few students in math that said, it's just so much easier for me to just watch you and write down a few things and know that I can get your notes later. And that was really helpful. And so when we were doing things like that, where I was solving a problem for them, I was fine if they didn't write it down. And then I would put all of those things that I solved or anything that I did in class, I would put that up for them. And so I, never again would have, I still would have students come to school. What did we do yesterday? But I never had to answer that question again.
Right.
Like, go online, go and check. So that was a big change for me early on, was just having that online home, online home for resources and lessons and learning. And, it's gotten even easier now with Google Classroom and just all the different LMSs that are out there. There are so many ways that you can share the, learning with students.
Well, it's not just with the students, but it's also with the parents as well. I know I've got my site and, I will have parents that will go on it and they'll see what the homework is and be like, what? I don't understand that. And then they'll watch the little video lesson that I put with it. and they'll be like, oh, this makes sense. Okay, now I can help my child.
Yes, exactly. I didn't get that as much with AP Physics.
Yeah. Well,
they kind of just steered clear. They were like, you just do your thing.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. Like, it's just transparency, and that's only a good thing, you know?
Yeah.
Really
I know that our school we use Schoology or Schoology, depending on how you pronounce it.
Schoology, and we use Schoology as well in our high school.
And so in the elementary division where I am, we're actually adopting it as our primary method to communicate with parents this year. Not necessarily, yeah. So not with the kids, because I think the kids, like my third graders, probably I don't know if they'd latch on to Schoology as well, because it's not as bright and colorful and engaging as a lot of other programs are. But there is a push on our end now to adopt Schoology as the primary method of communicating with parents. So it'll be interesting to see how that transition goes and see if we get a situation like you guys have where, there is that adoption and it is that method of primary communication if the parents actually do get on it. Because in the past, the parents who have, it's just been different teacher to teacher. It's been whether it's an email or whether it's some had a site, and that site could have been a Weebly or it could have been or any number of different things.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like that's a challenge that so many schools go through. I know when I first started sharing things online, I just had this little website. The school didn't tell me I had to have it. It was just me communicating with my students and parents. And then at some point, the school said, we're going to make a website for every teacher on our server, and we're going to let you edit that site. So then it became something where parents and students could go to the same place and get to any teacher's information. And I just feel like that's just like a common challenge or progression of events.
Yes. And my school is going through that right now. We're going through we've gone from everybody's got their own whatever, and now we've centralized on Moodle, and we've got a customized Moodle for primary, and everything is supposed to go onto Moodle.
And that can be a challenge, because you'll have teachers that are like, but I liked my way of doing it. But then you have to remember, but then you have to remember who is it for? And ultimately we should make it easy for our students.
Yes.
And that is the most common phrase that I do hear, especially now that we're kind of pushing Schoology, is, but I was doing it this way for so long and it was great and there wasn't any problems with it. So why am I doing? Yeah.
Why do I have to change?
I'm holding up my hand on that one, because I teach 11 different classes. So I've gone from maintaining one website that everybody can go to having to post things on 11 different Moodles. And I'm kind of like, you've just more than doubled my workload.
Yep.
Yes, and I don't know what the answer is for you, but I would say that for the parents who were checking in on 8 different websites, yours was one of the 8 teachers that their student had or whatever, and so they were checking there, and then they were checking someone's Moodle page, and then because we've talked with our high school students a bit about this, and they really just want all the stuff in one place.
Yes,
exactly. And they know that they could go to 8 different places, but it's also kind of like, we've got a lot going on. And if you look at our high school students' lives, they're busy. We're asking them to do a lot academically, and so many of them are involved in social and athletics and other activities and service. It's one thing that we could do to say, you know what, we're going to put the stuff all in one place. And be aligned on a few ways of communicating, because we know we're going to ask them to do all sorts of creative things.
Yes.
And they're going to use different apps and different websites and different whatever. But if we could just communicate in one place, it would save them a lot of time.
It would. It totally does. And I am on board with it, but every once in a while I do go to our tech person and just kind of punch the needle just a little bit, going, no.
Understandably.
And how long did it take, do you figure, before your teachers kind of stopped whinging about the situation?
Well, we're just going through the transition now. So I'll let you know when we finish. But what about you guys?
I don't know, Patrick. What would you say? Like when we moved to Google Calendar for homework, I feel like it didn't last very long.
I think people. Yeah, I think in general. So what we did is we went a super simple route, and we said we're just using Google Calendar. So we didn't use an LMS. We didn't use anything built for this. We just said you need to put down the homework onto the Google Calendar, and we set it up so that parents could subscribe as well. And so they could see all the students' classes and what was assigned. Now again, it's not robust. People couldn't embed videos and things like that. So people who wanted to go the extra mile and have more of an online presence were still using other things and linking out to it. But at a very basic level, it's the calendar app, and kids use it. And so I think it, while now they might be wanting to talk about something more robust, at the time, I think people saw it as beneficial for kids to have it all in one spot. And in general, people were happy to do it. I think one of the things that people would push back on is this idea of, but I put it on the board, it's the student's responsibility to write it down.
Oh, yes.
and what I would argue, and I know that I'm not going to win this argument with anyone who thinks the other way, but what I would argue is nobody learns by writing down, read page 52 to 57. You didn't learn anything there. And so that argument of, well, they need to write it down to learn it, well, that's a different thing we're talking about. Another thing I would say is that when other people assign me tasks, they don't tell it to me verbally. They send me an email or they put it in my calendar. The way the world works now is that if you're expected to do something, someone sends you the information.
Yes.
Or you have a place to access it. And so it's just being relevant and authentic by being able to put it in a place that kids can access it 24/7 and not have to walk into your classroom and look at your whiteboard to get the information.
Exactly, because you know what? They may see you, on a Monday and then not see you again until the following week because there was a holiday or something like that. It's, there's situations where you definitely need to be able to access it without being in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and going back to, a child's not at school, they can participate if they're able to.
Yeah. That's all we have time for today, but part 4 is on its way. Do make sure you listen.